Hey everyone.
Hey everyone.
Hey Surya.
Let me pull up my screen to share the meeting notes. 1 second.
Yeah, we should. I'm just kind of dialing in from my laptop. 1 second. I wanted to ask you things.
Let me quickly share the agenda. Okay, hopefully everybody is able to see the agenda. Okay,
Yeah.
please, is
Can
there
you guys hear
anybody
me?
who wants to? Yeah, we can hear you, Girish. So if there are any items that people need to bring up, please add it to the agenda doc so that we can plan the meeting to be efficient. And I think you wanted to bring up a few items, Girish. Do you want to probably
Yeah,
add
yeah.
that to
Let's.
the end of the agenda? And we can come
Yeah,
back to
I'll do
that.
that. Yeah, I'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Issue triage from my part will be 0 minutes because I did go through the support issues and also the, let's say, any new issues opened by end users, and I did not see anything new apart from what was assigned last week. So actually a reminder for people who assigned yourselves to issue triage in the previous weeks, please check your issues if it's assigned and close them out if the reporter is not replying to your comments, let's say. So I did not find any new issues here. For CI Flake dispatch, is Nadia on the call? Is she on PTO today, Girish?
I don't think so.
She should join. We were just in a meeting together.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't see any Flake dispatch issues from Nadia for this week, but there were a few issues that we needed help with triage again. So I can try to open that link.
Hey, all,
in
yeah, that's
another-
exactly why I didn't add any more things, because we were struggling to assign the previous one. So I figured, okay,
Right.
I should slow down on that.
Yeah. So let's quickly do that. So one of them, Perry had volunteered to take. So there are 3 other unassigned issues. Does anybody on the call have cycles to assign yourself to these flakes to triage them? If so, please do so. Oh, somebody spoke up.
Me, I'm going to take one.
Nice. So I'll give you the one with the most comments, which is 5. It's a guess that is what we're hitting with most velocity. Thank you, Jaime. Okay, we have 2 more. 46354394. Anyone from NVIDIA wants to pick these? Equal load between NVIDIA and Red Hat.
To quickly say that I did file them together because I think they could be related. I'm not sure, there are like way too many failures with the MATLLB, so maybe we should try to start working on the first 2, and then so that if we figure out it's a similar issue, we don't have 4 people working on the same problem at the same time.
Nadia, I think I have one PR. I think which is going to fix most of these problems.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Maybe I will just paste the PR here. Maybe you can take a look whenever you have time.
Yeah, that's exactly what I meant. Also, I guess Jaime, maybe take a look at that, or like I don't know, don't start working on that one before we figure out.
Yeah, I think that is better. Maybe
if this is the fix.
Can take a look.
Do you have a link to that PR?
Yeah, I pasted it in the chat, so there you can just.
Okay, I'm going to put that on the agenda. So maybe Jaime, you can help review that one, and then based on that, you can.
Sounds good.
But yeah, Nadia, you basically lost an assignee if you had brought a new flake issue, but it's okay.
Oh no, yeah. But
next meeting.
Better. Yeah.
We'll do it in the next meeting. But regardless, people shouldn't wait for Nadia to bring these up in the meetings. Please go through the CI flake labeled issues in our backlog. So they look like these. There's plenty of them. And you can sort them based on the number of comments that you see. And anybody who has cycles is encouraged to assign yourself to CFLix. And Nadia has cleaned it up for us. The backlog should be pretty fresh, not stale. Okay, moving on. If there is no questions on that, thank you, Jaime and Perry, for volunteering. Martin, you're next.
Yeah, so I have an idea that I want to bring to this forum. So I was working on the into-ins a lot recently, and sometimes it was difficult to get maintainers' eyes on it. And my idea is maybe we can open up that into-in package to an extended set of folks that include the maintainers, but maybe other folks also. So I was wondering about that. Is that something that folks would even entertain that idea? So yeah, I just want, I guess, maintainers' opinions.
I think it goes back generally to what we discussed last time with Miguel also, not just end-to-end separate like owners file, but basically a general split of the code so that people could own or have more power over specific areas of code, which end-to-end test could be one of them. And it sounds like it makes more and more sense. Large projects do that all the time, and it seems like it's maybe time for us to do the same.
Yeah, let's also have backup for every like person 1 and person 2 in that way.
Sorry, Girish, could you repeat? I didn't
Yeah.
understand.
You know, I was just saying for every subsystem that we have, like UDNs and I don't know, network various features we have, network costs, UDNs, and everything, correct? Um, for we should identify the primary person for each of those things, and also second person who can also equally handle it. You see what I'm saying? It's not just one person. I mean, we can
Yeah,
start with one, and then we can have another person backing them up if that person is not there.
yeah, but I think in today's thing, the E2Es are easier to have owners for, which is probably why Martin's raising that to begin with. The code split itself is a spaghetti, so it's impossible to have sub-ownership just for the UDN controllers because the NAD controllers are very much tied to the default network controller, which is very much tied to the base controller, and the L3 and L2 controllers are all tied together, same for local net. And what Miguel was looking for was a split ownership of only local net because virtualization team kind of owns that area and or are comfortable owning that area. And the same for KubeVirt controller for live migration. But we're not at a stage at which we could do that. So for the main code and main features itself, even for egress IP, it needs a bit more code level refactoring and structuring for our repo. But for E2Es, maybe we can still start small. So I still think that for E2Es, it's a good idea. But
Also to the point of many owners, it's still like the approvers we have today, their power still applies to everything. So basically every area, even if it gets one extra owner, it's just one extra person that can approve that, plus all the other approvers.
No, my worry is if you put somebody as an owner, and then we should not be blocked by that owner giving +1, even though I'm very good in that subsystem. You see what I'm saying? So
Right.
it's
What I'm
not.
saying is every approver from the existing, like the repository-wide approvers that we have today, they
Mhm.
will also be able to approve these sub areas. It's not like only the new owner can approve stuff. It's like all the same set of people that we have today, plus extra people that have powers over specific folders, basically.
Right, but I
Make
thought
sense?
you just said we're only looking for E2E because there are so many. So I'm a little confused. But I see your
Yeah,
point. Yeah, let's start with some.
E2E is just what we can do today. I mean, we would love maybe to do that for other things, but as Surya mentioned, like
yeah,
there is no proper way to split that into folders because that's, I think, how automation could work.
yeah. So
Yeah.
our everything for us is in package OVN. Like unless we split that out into separate packages where it's a bit more cleaner, we probably can't do that sub area ownership yet. But as a project, I think it's good to think about that. And I think almost all of our new controllers in code are being written that way. So that's kind of nice. Like for example, the route advertisements is package OVN controller route advertisement, right? So we could do that, but for now, to answer Martin's question for E2Es, I think it's a good idea. I think generally everyone's agreeing. So the next step would be for having a maintainer champion. to have a mailing list thread, and unless there's any concerns from Jaime or Tim. So it requires all 5 maintainers to say or veto for this. I personally don't have problems. So that would be the next step. So maybe we need this written down somewhere and then think about who are those E2E package experts.
So do you want me to create an issue for this to start it?
I think
how do
so.
you want
I
me
think,
to help?
yeah, I think an issue is a good way to track it down, to write it down, and then all the maintainers can chime in into that issue if they are against the idea. And then to actually select the owners, that might need some, I think according to our governance, an internal proposal of names or something like that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'm not like, I just want the existing set of maintainers in that owners file, right? And then folks, when they prove themselves over a period of time, then they can be added into that.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to start with. So let's do an issue for that. Let's add the current maintainers and then the subsystem work for plumbing that, because I think today it's not that straightforward. It's manually added on GitHub. There is a branch protection rule that says only these 5 people can merge. We need to do something different there to do it on a PR by PR basis.
But I guess first of all, I get the issue and get Axe on that, and then kind of describe from a high level view what needs to be done.
Makes sense. Okay, thank you, Martin. Martin to open an issue and for maintainers to chime in there. Anything else on that topic from anyone? Okay, if not, moving on. Maciej, welcome. I think you have the floor for your topic if you're here.
Yeah.
How many minutes do you need? 20 is enough?
I have a demo as well. I'm not sure if it's gonna be too long. I don't have to do the demo. It's up to you, to be honest. But I would prefer to show it what we want to do. But I'm not sure whether 20 minutes can fit it. Maybe 30. Hopefully, I will
okay.
try
We can assign 30 for now. The only other remaining item is from Girish. Girish, I'm allotting 15 minutes, but we can always come back. We'll see.
Absolutely.
Can I share screen?
Yeah. Are you able to see, or am I supposed to give you co-host?
You need to have, I think, give me co-host. Yeah. So and as Surya, yeah. Can you
claim host? Are you able to see the button to claim host?
Yeah, I need code. Then.
Well, the thing is, okay, give me a few minutes to figure that out. Meanwhile, let me share your doc and you can start on it.
All right. So, thank you for maybe we can do that. Yeah. So, hello, folks. My name is Maciej. I am part of the multi-network community working group. So this is something that we created a few years back under SIG networking, and we there tried to kind of come up with ways to standardize the multi-network approach, right? And we came to kind of this solution. I'm here to kind of solicit this a bit and maybe to trigger some sort of collaboration around this to have a more unified approach in Kubernetes on how multi-networking is done. I know right now you have some stuff of your own here. I'm from Google, so we have something similar on our own at Google as well. But we would like to have something that is like standardized across the board. And yeah, this is kind of the proposal that we have currently. And I'd like to kind of talk about this and show it off and maybe trigger some discussion. If you have any questions, please free to kind of interrupt me and I can answer the questions. So basically,
interest. Sorry, a quick question. So you said you're from Google, correct? Is there any interest within Google to use OVS, OVN as SDN, or are you kind of approaching all the CNIs communities out there to brainstorm this idea of multi-network with DRA?
No, our goal is to define a commonized API. We are currently using in the backend Cilium and BPF, so that's our backend. I don't think we would want to move out of that. It would be too big of a breakthrough to kind of pull out of that part. So at Google, we are currently heavily invested into BPF approach, and I don't think we want to change that. So my goal here is to standardize the APIs, right? So that we can kind of work on one common APIs and approach. Yeah, that's kind of the goal. And as you said, right, I'm trying to reach out to most of the popular CNIs that does multi-network and solicit this and see where there's an interest.
Okay, cool.
So why we did it, and this is why you're doing it, but just kind of quickly, Multus, I think from at least my point of view, is that I think the most popular approach that kind of handles this in some way. Then recently we have the AI/ML workloads that's driving a lot of use cases and the DRH stuff, right? That's happening in Kubernetes today. Then yeah, we do have the multi-interface, multi-network use cases that we want to cover, right? And they are relevant, right? Why you're doing it, why we are doing it at Google as well. So we have the KubeVirt, you have the physical separation of controlling the data plane and other use cases that you can think of. And then, as I mentioned, the DRA, right? This is very hot topic today. Everyone's contributing to that, and it's very lively, the whole project. And kind of it handles resources, and we kind of in current proposal we are trying to leverage that, right, and see whether we can do something about this to enable the multi-networking stuff. Okay, let's move on. And basically what we want to answer here is, can DRA be used for multi-network? Then can we meet all the user journeys with it? And lastly, how we can fix any missing gaps, right? So that's kind of what we want to do. Next slide. So what we did and how I'm trying to position this whole thing is split kind of the use cases into kind of 3 segments. First segment is basically your direct DRA approach, where I don't care about any additional stuff related to multi-network. I just want to have my GPU traffics in a specific way selected and added to pod, or I just want to have an alignment between that GPU and my interface, and that's it. What I care, I need connectivity. I just need that. I don't care what IP I get. I don't care about any types of any type of isolation, segmentation, or anything like this, right? So that. Sorry, we lost the screen. Yeah, thank you. And then the second piece is what we are currently at. This is the stage we are at, right? We want to define some sort of API in a ways where this API will centralize the configuration for a network, right? Like before, I didn't care. I individually per pod configured something for the segment A. For segment B, I'm in need of a centralized administrative configuration, right? Which is cluster level. And basically B, if some of you might know DRA, probably could be done with classes. A DRA comes with device classes, so this is kind of like what you could handle that part as well. But B is our kind of stepping stone towards the C section segment, which basically builds on top of the kind of common API and then builds additional primitives of Kubernetes to add features, right? Like serviceability, like network policies, and other aspects, right? Like whatever you can think of. Next slide, please. So why do we think that segmentation is useful? So basically it provides different levels of complexity that users can engage with the new API. DRA ends up being the application developer facing API. So we do want to leverage that, the popularity of DRA, today's focus on the array to it eventually being the user-facing, the end-user-facing API. And I'm going to show you that more what I mean by that, but that's kind of the goal. And lastly, we can separate the engagement in different tracks, right? Some folks can only focus on how we segment or discover things in the array. They can focus on that aspects. Some might want to focus on how the kind of pod network API looks like. They can focus on that one. Or lastly, folks can focus on more detailed things like how the service is going to work, right? Or how the network policy. So we can separate, and those things can go in parallel to develop the whole thing. Next slide. And basically how we are seeing those kind of use cases, at least that we can think of, is you have segment A. Basically, I just need a high performance interface into my pod, right? So this is where I would go with I can go with just directly the array, right? Then I want to have a representation of my legacy networking, I won't care about some isolation between stuff, and I want to have a centralized means of defining those networks. Then I will just need the API, the pod network API, to do that for me. And lastly, this is where I want to have a fully blown VPC approach for my cluster, right? I want to have a VPC like from the public cloud VPC type style, where I can group my pods per network and basically even connect just that single interface into the pod, right? So that's kind of the holy grail, I would think, from my point of view. And the same goes for pods, and then likely as well for VMs, right? Where I can just spin VMs in any network and do whatever I need to, right? So that's where I need all the most kind of functionality to kind of handle that. And that's for that reason, what we currently did, the current proposal introduces a pod network object. It is a CRD. It is representing a network that a pod can attach to, right? It's a centralized resource on how it's being governed. And then lastly, what we want to do, this is kind of the long term, is to bind to it all the Kubernetes primitives, right? Think serviceability, right? I'm pointing to a pod and then to a specific pod network that I want to attach to that. The spec itself is very simple. I don't want to go through that, but I have a link at the end of the presentation to the kind of PR that introduces this. And basically it's kind of bare bones. There's not much to it. The parameters section, the bottom section, the last item on the spec, is basically a row blob. So this is just an example of configuration for, I think from Multus, or I took an example of how it can be configured. But this is something that user implementation specific. And since currently there is not much contributors to this, you can see this is only enabled and provided as a standardized fields. So that's kind of the approach. And this is something that's why I'm kind of soliciting across other CNIs to see and join in, to maybe we can pull some and define some additional common fields. And it doesn't have to be even immediate. This can be as we go, because right now we want to get something on the floor, right? Having even the handler itself, I think, would be a big win. And having a blob to kind of handle all the cases, that's another thing. And the basic, as I said, the parameters. I kind of, for the parameters, I was kind of copying stuff from the array. The array has a lot of fields as well that were configs, and they are just blobs. And that's why I did it here. And you can think it's not very fancy, but as I said, this is initial proposal, this is alpha, and something is subject to discuss with all the kind of other implementations of where we can push it further on.
A couple of questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you said you're from multi-network SIG, right? So in that SIG, is pod network the first custom resource coming out of it, or like where is the multi-network SIG right now today?
This is what I'm presenting. This is where we are currently at the stage where we have this proposal. we have defined the kind of the API in this initial form and the interactions with the array. This is what I'm kind of showing up here. The other thing that we are doing, we are working towards a reference implementation. As a first goal is to implement a simple networking driver through the array, if you can think of. And then long term, it will be a reference implementation for the pod network itself, or whatever we're going to decide to name it, or whatever form it's going to be at. And then eventually get to the stage where you can have like a proxy approach for the whole thing, right? Where maybe, I'm not sure whether that's possible. We'll see that because we will need to have a proxy probably in the mix to kind of support what we want to do, like for serviceability. That will be the next stage, right? Yeah. Let me maybe talk about the DRA kind of integration, unless you have other questions to this.
Yeah. Just two more questions. The provider here is the DRA provider. Is it like it could be Intel or NVIDIA or whoever it is trying
That's
to plug that? And the parameters, like a lot of our CNI, like at least in our CNI, we don't have the concept of master and mode. So how is this list of fields under parameters?
As I mentioned, this is a
generic
blob.
enough?
This is an example. The parameters is a blob. You defined your spec today. And I provided here an example from Multus CNI configuration and converted it to a YAML format. That's it. And this is not, the parameters, as I said, is a blob. I'm going to show you my example, which is completely different.
Okay. When you
This
say,
is why I'm soliciting this to kind of introduce some standardization. Right now, as I said, there is enabled and provider, right? I'm going to enable it is just as simple as just make it ready or not. But parameters, as I said, is currently just a blob. Yeah, go ahead.
okay. No, go ahead. I'll wait for your rest of the slides.
All right, so let's switch to this one. So I'm not sure how far this group is familiar with DRA itself. If you want me to give me some context on the DRA itself aspect, let me know. Right now, I'm kind of assuming you are somehow familiar with it. But if you have more questions about DRA itself, let me know so that it's more clear. But basically, you can here see kind of how we are splitting the kind of the objects itself and what is where, right? So we have the application developer. So this is the end user that writes the deployments and deploy the application. And basically with them goes with the resource claims. And today with DRA, you have resource claim template or a standard resource claim, and this kind of interchangeable. But what we want to say here is the user then with their pod, they put a selector in the resource claim saying, I want this pod network, right? That's what it is. The pod network is, we want to make it some sort of a standardized key eventually within the array itself, where basically we say, okay, the pod network, and then what is the network you want to connect to? And then you attach that resource claim to a pod. And on the right side hand, you have a resource claim that basically is that out. You can see here, one big thing is that no more annotations on the pod. It's a straightforward spec on the pod to kind of call out a resource, which is in this case a interface into this specific pod network. So that's kind of where we are in the application. Then we have the pod network. The handler for the network is something that we consider a cluster administrator will define to define what networks you want to have in your clusters, right, and represent them in some way. And then lastly, the DRA driver is the provider of the pod network, right? So let's say OVN or Google or whoever else will have to do that, right? They write the DRA driver. And the DRA driver is responsible for two things. The first part DRA driver does the discovery aspects. On the right hand, you have the resource slice. This is again part of the DRA API, which in a standardized ways that DRA defines, you list out what sort of resources are available for each node in the cluster. And the one aspect that the DRH have to understand is the pod network. And basically, for whatever, in however you design how you want to use this pod network, and keep in mind, this is all up to you how you do that. I'm not putting any kind of restrictions, because here you are fully in control and can leverage the full power of the array. Whatever the array can do, this is what you can leverage. The only aspect we ask is add this additional attribute into the resources that you define as belonging to the specific pod network. And right now, my example is a very basic devices, and when I'm going to do my demo, I'm listing just node interfaces. But this is very basic, and DRA driver already has capabilities to, example, list virtual interfaces, right, and slice a specific or define, how they call it in the CAP is define capacity for a specific device, right? So basically, then I can slice specific device into multiple, for example, to represent a virtual interface, right? Or however else I want to define. Keep in mind, the resource slice is basically a list of devices that then the scheduler itself understands. And whatever the specific resource claim then requests. So it's up to the implementation on how they want to slice and dice it, to be honest. So I'm just going to providing some example one. The other examples are in the array itself. So that's basically that. So the only thing that we want to put is for the devices that you care and are to be representative for the specific pod network, they have to have this additional attribute pod network BlueNet, right? And yeah, and then maybe next slide. This is more detailed view of this whole thing. This is like this is more details and like some YAMLs here. So on the right side hand, you have your pod. Start from the top left, you have your pod, and on the right you have the resource claim in the middle. And you can see kind of I highlighted the things that I want to kind of point out and how you would do it. Where you would just on the middle, you will have your expression saying that I want pod network BlueNet, right? And before I go to the circled items, the pod network on the left, you can see here in this example, the parameters is just list me all the interfaces that are named ENS224. And this is my demo as well, doing the same thing where my pod network is defined as such, right? All the interfaces that are named, and the only thing that you can specify the name of the interface, but this is a demo, that's how it went with it. It can be whatever you wish, right? It can be as well a link or a reference to an existing object. You probably could do that as well, right? I don't want to recreate anything. If I want to standardize, let me maybe just link this with something else, right? You could do that if you wish to. And then basically based on those pod network, the DRA driver will add this specific attribute to the resource slice, right? As I mentioned in the previous slide. So, and you can see I'm pointing out the standardization, because the last aspect of this kind of standardization is you can see in the resource claim in the status, you can provide data for the specific interfaces that you pushed into the pod, and you can see you can provide the network data field. It has a network address, the name of the interface inside the pod, and an IPs it has assigned, right? So all this data can be provided by your driver. And then what we are seeing in the future is to leverage that to build our serviceability, for example, right? Because we need the IPs. And for that, the additional standardization is the data section, a bit above that I circled up. We need that to align this network data to the specific pod network, right? Because without it, there will no other ways to kind of link this status to a specific device. And you can see this is a list. The devices is a list, and you can have multiple of those in a specific resource claim. So to kind of avoid any type of any sort of confusion, we kind of said that, yeah, okay, so in the data section, you have to provide this additional info. And the data section, again, is a blob. So it can be anything. So you can put any additional data that your implementation might require. But from our point of view, we would require this one field of pod network, right, to have this kind of standardized.
So Maciej,
yeah, go ahead.
I have a question about like the overall scope of this effort. So can we go back one slide? Yeah, this one. So are you familiar with user-defined networks that we have in Open Kubernetes?
I think Surya slightly kind of explained this to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So with user-defined networks, we allow either a tenant or the cluster admin to define networks that are going to be used by the pod.
Mhm.
And that can either be the primary network that's attached to the pod. So like rather than just attaching to the default cluster network, you can create a network and say this pod should always attach to this, or you could have secondary networks like we do today with Multis and NADs. But in this API you're putting here, the pod gets to decide what network it's going to attach to.
Yeah.
Whereas we have use cases that cover both. So like an administrator might want to create a network and say any pods that are created in a namespace selector that matches these namespaces should always be attached to this network. So how is that done in this implementation, or is that even in scope of this implementation?
It is in scope, but we consider this a very it is in scope. That was something that one of the use cases that we had in mind to do that. Right now, I don't think we have a means to kind of do this, and I think there are two good things about this, because this is not a multi-networking problem; it's a DRA problem. Since we built everything around DRA, we can go to the DRA and say, "Hey, can we have a standardized or maybe a default resources for a namespace?" And that solves your problem, because then I say any pod created in this namespace get this default resource, right? And this is, I think, a valid use case, which probably we can create a cap for in DRA to enable this. You see?
Yeah, so then that becomes very similar to like the user-defined networks where we created CRDs to define a network for a namespace.
So that's that kind of thing that we don't have to solve this for just multi-network with this. Of course, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because then you have to solve it for everyone, right? And you have to take it into the array. But considering the kind of the velocity of the array that it's currently in, I think it will be quite good use case to kind of add there.
Yeah, I think it'd be good. So we have like a enhancement doc and user guides on user-defined networks and how they work. So it might be good for you to read through that and then compare it to what you're doing, and then we can like figure out where the gaps are and how we could reconcile them.
So I think the one gap is definitely what you just called out, right? So the default namespace, default resources. I think this is something that I wasn't aware. But I think the other aspect is like I think permissions. I think Surya, you mentioned that, right? Where you have a cluster scope objects versus namespace scope, right? I think that's one aspect that's something that you currently did. And keep in mind that our driver here is DRA. So this is another thing is when DRA decides to and finally gets to the stage where we need to have a ACLs or some sort of a permission control on who can kind of claim specific resource, we're just going to get it for free, because they will have to have that as well, right, in the clusters, where how a specific pod, when and if specific pod can point to a specific claim, right, or specific devices. So that's something that they will have to solve anyway by themselves, and this is where we're gonna just get it, right? Or we can drive that. So that's one of the two. Keep in mind that's right now this whole thing is premised around DRA, and DRA is the front-end center kind of API for this. Yeah.
See, I have follow-up questions on that, right? So one is DRA, as I understood, was more of carving out VFs or scalable functions from a NIC, and then kind of advertising that as a resource slice so that the kube scheduler knows if somebody asks for nvd.com slash some kind of a VF or SF, the scheduler knows where to schedule the pod to, right? And TRA driver essentially replaces the SRO device plugin and through resource slice advertises the resources available on every node and kube scheduler schedules the pod. So the multi-network integration is the same TRA driver now after having advertised the resource slice should also provide the network parameters like MTU, what is the MTU for that guy, what is the MAC address, what is the IP address, what are all the additional routes. So is that something the DRA driver should do
Yeah,
for
because
each network?
keep in mind DRA driver is you implemented, right? Yes, and eventually that's correct, because when you what you can see here in terms of pod network and the resource claim, you have and this is another detail, just kind of digging further into the array itself. Resource claims can have configs, and basically I can define things what you just called out either on a pod network level, like every pod has to have this configuration, or I can define it on a pod level. So you have that flexibility with this, right? Because your resource claim, it doesn't have to have just selectors. It can have as well additional configs for your drivers. As this is just part of the array. It's not related to multi-network. It's just how the array works, where your client can have additional configurability provided and passed into your array driver. So basically it will know, oh, for this pod, I have to set MTU on X, or I have to use MAC address that, right?
No, my question. See,
And
this
basically, to kind of answer your initial, what is the difference between just handling VF versus handling a, I don't know, VF interface or MAC VLAN? To be honest, like the only thing is it's virtual versus non-virtual. Like virtual function is virtual as well, but it's a limited resource to maybe not fully unlimited, but almost unlimited, the VF, right? And it just boils down to you representing that unlimitedness in some ways, in the way however you want. And then there is already means in the resource slice to represent, as I mentioned, through the capacity to kind of do that.
right,
Did I
right.
answer your question, Jewish, or maybe do you have some other?
Yeah, a couple of like, see, what is the advantage of doing selector spot network equals blue net versus selectors high speed port equals some PF, okay? And I just write the, I'm not able to understand. I think at some point in the call you said people can just use DRA driver to plug multiple devices into the pod. Now I can also ask the DRA driver to give me other additional network parameters for those devices. So with, see what I'm saying is with DRA, what with DRA we have today, I can plug multiple devices from multiple PF, multiple NICs on that node to a pod, and then also now extend the DRA driver to also give network parameters. So where does the multi-network come into picture and how is it?
So as I mentioned, yes, you could do that through just the resource claim, right? You would not need the pod network. You will not need the selector. You're perfectly correct. That's what I was saying. Like you could standardize the common fields through device class. There is because device class is a cluster level object. The problem with device class is you would not be able, it would be tricky to now integrate the device class of the array with a service or with other old network policy.
Yeah, VPCs. Okay.
And basically build future things on top of them, right? Because device class can represent different things. It can represent a VF, it can represent a network, it can represent a GPU. So then you would have to hook up on that. And we with this proposal, we say, I think it's better to have a network specific object that can represent and have a handle, a separate handle that will represent the device, so that later on I can build my services, my network policies, my other stuff on top of it, right? Because you will have to have a handle for it. And that's a valid point, because like, even internally we were like, there were folks voicing like, okay, you can do the whole thing. And even our community meetings, we had that discussion, right? Then you can do everything through the array, right? And
Yeah.
deal with that. But basically, and that's what I'm saying, that the section D, the segment D, what we are currently in, you probably could do with just the array. But this
Yeah,
is
it could
the
be more
stepping.
complex.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'll have let's say you have a NIC. I can create a pool of 64 VFs. And that 64 VFs can be a common pool, but on top of that, through pod network, I can further segment into
Even that,
yeah,
yes, if you want to, yes, you can slice and that in that ways, right?
Yeah. Through pod. Again, going back to what Tim was asking, which also was on my mind, you keep saying, okay, we can solve this by having a default per namespace, but UDNs that exist today in our Kubernetes is much more than just one primary UDN per namespace. It can have tens of secondary UDNs per namespace. In fact, you can now have more than one primary UDN as well, but that's an implementation thing. So you've started this as a cluster scoped object, right? As I understood, pod network is a cluster scoped object. Shouldn't we make it a like maybe cluster pod network and then keep pod network for future to make it namespace scoped, just like how we did it with UDNs?
So, and this is where fine, but there are two, and I'm going to push back on that because I have my own implementation, which doesn't have that, right? So this is where the discussion now has to step in, right? And basically see what's possible in both ways. Right now, this is the current approach. What we did, it is kind of aligned with what Multus kind of does, right? Without the network namespacing.
No,
And what
actually,
we
Hey,
if you go
folks,
back to
can I
slide
please
6.
interrupt you here? Because I think you're going a bit into implementation details, which is a totally valid conversation. But I think the idea of coming here was slightly different, and we are also running out of time.
Yeah, I think
so I wanted to just circle back because, first of all, I wanted to tell you that I have been working on DRA in Kubernetes, actually. So, and fun fact, I just messaged you in Kubernetes Slack this morning about that. So for everyone else, just a quick recap, this DRA-based approach for now is only talking about secondary networks from what I understand, because all these like primary UDN/default network problems have not been solved on the upstream level. So for now, it's only replacing what we can do with NADs and like secondary networks. The main advantage that it brings is that it allows you to do the scheduling that is aware of which resources are present on which nodes. So that's the main advantage of the DRA compared to like the Maltese approach. I will, Machi, for you to, I have reviewed your enhancement actually, and there are more things to discuss there, but I guess in general, what you're doing makes sense. It's kind of just a replacement of what we are doing with Maltese currently, but just in the Kubernetes scope. So what are you looking for here from this meeting? I
would like kind of collaborate on exactly that discussion that Girish just triggered, right? On basically you had your use cases, I have my use cases. And right now, there are not much voices in the multi-network community sync around this. I'm not sure where this can be happening. Should it be happening here? Or should be happening on the multi-network. We have our own meetings on Wednesdays at 8 every other week, and we're trying to seek collaboration. I think that's the main goal here, right?
Can you paste
if you're interested, right, then
yeah, awesome. I think we're totally interested, and yeah, but it makes sense to have this discussion in the multi-network SIG. I think so. Just please paste the invite. We'll join and share our feedback on that.
Can you? I think you're not present. Can you? I think the last slide has.
Yeah,
it has all the details.
I can go back to the last slide. Yeah, I was about to say it happens every Wednesday at 5 p.m. European time. So anybody interested, please go and join those meetings and
I will
participate.
add. I'm missing here. Yeah, let me add to your notes as well the links to kind of our meeting notes. And basically, the invite is if you're part of the Kubernetes, the SIG networking, we are there as well. The invite is there on that mailing list for SIG networking. But still, let me add the details here on the meeting, and you can it's not it's every other Wednesday. Surya.
Okay.
So
So can we
yeah.
go back to the slide, please? I had a question on slide 6. I mean, it's okay. I can talk about my stuff next week because it's very critical. We have a lot of use cases where we use multi-home pods. Okay, not just for the AI workload where the east-west networks are for GPU direct. We also have other cloud gaming use cases where we make the pod multi-homed. Okay, in the slide C, you already have several namespaces, right? Each namespace has a collection of pods, and each pod is on a different network of its own, correct? Like VPC for pod.
That's the kind of the holy grail, yes.
Yes, that's a holy grail, correct? So it's already namespace scoped,
Yeah,
correct? Like you could argue that you can use cluster scoped objects to
so
create this, but also if it's namespace scoped, I can come in and within that VPC, right? Like namespace C is its own VPC, namespace B is its own VPC. I, as a VPC owner, I want to create multiple networks so that my subset of pods are on its own set of islands or networks, right?
right.
So I am an admin of my namespace. As a namespace admin, I should be able to put my own pods within that namespace on a different islands or VPCs.
Right. So yeah, let's maybe talk more. So I will add that this is where we want to head. Right now, we are in just defining the API
Mm-hmm.
and how it behaves and how it interacts. You have your use case. Let's try to align on how that can be done with current approach, and we can change it. Nothing is approved yet.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
The meeting for our thing will happen this Wednesday, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, because it's off weekend from the SIG networking meeting. So yeah, it was last week. So yeah, so we are going to have a sync meeting this week. I will leave a link to the meeting notes in the notes as well, so that you can get all the details on how to join. But yeah, that's kind of the kind of the gist of this. I all welcome you, and we
So
happy
the
to
one
have further the collaboration.
Yeah, one last question on the slide. You said you're going to support network policies and clusters, Kubernetes cluster stuff, correct? Would that be on um like should I be reading your PR where it says how it deals with network policies and
So we are not
cluster
there yet,
services? Okay.
Girish. As I
Yeah.
said, we are just defining that we are in the very middle of the section. We didn't define the whole world, as I said. I
Okay.
advertise a lot. Maybe that's a mistake, or maybe not, because I want to define where we are heading, but we don't have all the details yet.
Okay.
You
Fair enough.
see, I'm not sure. OVN is its own project, so it's easier. Like I'm trying to define this for the last almost 3 years now, and it's tricky because I was being pushed back because of like what is possible in core that has to be outside of it. All those aspects kind of constantly. So this gave me a idea to start small and start from that. All right. I think
Wonderful.
that's where I'm heading. That's why I'm just defining, and you can see it's bare bones in terms of what the object itself defines, and those. So let's talk right now. Let's talk
Okay.
with something that we can set ourselves properly for the future, right? For the next stuff, right? So that's where our focus is. Our focus currently is just kind of let's have the handle itself, right? And then we build from that. And I think just to one aspect of the primary. So the network is. I don't think OVN Nadia. Did you solve the primary only? I don't think is that solved, because I think that's still a problem. So with the
Yeah,
array,
we have our own way of solving the primary network case,
but still, through the default CNI is still there, right?
we are the default CNI.
In terms of like the default network is still
Yeah, you can actually, you can read a bit more details about that, but no, we try to basically replace the default network if you ask to do so.
Oh, okay.
But there is a tiny little thing that's still left for kubelet probes to work. So,
yeah,
but
exactly.
that's like behind the curtains.
Yeah. So basically, that those are the aspects that has to be solved in upstream, and then this is where we eventually would want to do as well. Where, what if we were to define all the networking via this, right? Not the CNIs. And this has to be, just add another aspect. We have to take into account existing clusters, right? Or all the users that would want to use this. It's not like it's going to be delivered for every cluster, but still someone enables this on their cluster. And what does that mean if now all the networking is done through this, right? Through a resource, right? So that kind of aspects has to be taken into account, and how this has to be handled, right? Yeah, just to kind of add the last number. Okay, thanks for now. I see the demo. Sorry, I couldn't do it. There are some recordings, but yeah.
Yeah, I think you have. Maybe you can link it also to the agenda, but I already see that you have recorded.
So you have a one-click
presentation.
demo here. Yeah,
Yeah.
you have the one-click link. You can get to there, and there is a README that you can basically make demo, and it has all the things that I showed. You can. It will be everything correct. There will be a pod that requested a dummy interface into itself, and you can see the references. I showed up what I showed in the presentation. This will all implement it. The other links is just the other components in the presentation. The other links is just the other components required to build all this, what I needed to do.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much, Maciej, for coming to the meeting and
Sorry
presenting this. No, this was really nice. And I know that if people here on the OVN Kubernetes community are interested in collaboration for use cases, please go to the SIG Network multi-network meeting that happens every other Wednesday at 5. And thank you once again, Maciej, for coming and presenting this year. Okay, we are at time, just 2 minutes remaining. I don't know if any of these items are quick, Girish. We can go through them. If not, next meeting.
Yeah, I'll just go to the first one. The second and third one is fairly straightforward. Or maybe the booth one. We can kind of collaborate on booth stuff on the Slack.
Who is coming for the booth from KubeCon? I asked in Slack, but I didn't get a response from anybody in NVIDIA. From NVIDIA side, what are the names?
Nadia is coming for sure. I'm not coming. I don't know, Tim, are you going or not? So
I have to wait to see if the request gets approved to go.
Okay, cool. Possibly Tim. Yeah, I'm in the middle of some big project here. I'm gonna skip this time. But I will be there for Prague, and there we are presenting a couple of topics. So, one is on multi-VTEP and VTEP transport zones and the state of the art there. I think Tim is going to talk about SFC current state of affairs. Um, the flow test is flow test is our get out of jail card for a lot of if somebody everything, all the fingers points to networking. Even if something is not working, we always get pointed back and networking is not working. So we run this flow test, and then flow test has been mostly like Billy stuff that right now is Python based and it's right now in the Avan org, right? I wanted to quickly check if any effort is
Didn't we
going
move
on.
it already into OVN Kubernetes org? Isn't that the traffic flow test thing?
Correct,
It's not in
correct.
OVN org, right? It's in our org.
Sorry, Avan Kubernetes org, correct. My question is it main, like, have we added it with support for PUDN or SUDN and things like that? Because we started to add it, but ours
I don't
is still
think we did. Yeah.
okay. So because we want to rerun the same set of flow tests, but instead of using an ad, we were enabling it for UDN, and then make sure we can do perf run, curl, and things like that. And then quickly pinpoint if the issue is really with OVN or Avan Kubernetes, or it's actually the application issue. So I'll keep you guys posted. But the thing is, the all of our changes is um, shell script based. Either we move to Python from upstream and contribute back, or we should move everything to Golang. Anyways, that we need to discuss this. Maybe next week we can pull this up at the top and we can have a discussion on that.
Yes, I
Cool.
think that sounds good.
Cool. Thanks. Thank you.
I think we are at time. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Have a great rest of your day. See you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, bye now.